Okay, our next section is how to create a personal collecting mission. So we've covered some of the high impact activities in terms of what it means to our organization and our community, as well as what it means to ourselves as individual human beings and professionals. And now we'll get into a few more reflective questions to help us evaluate and unearth what it is that our activities and projects that we do that have the most value for us and that should be a part of our collecting mission, or AKA our job or life mission. So defining your collecting mission, thinking about high impact activities, what we just covered in the last section. Which activities are critical for you to do? So of all of the things in your organization and all of the things under your own particular department umbrella, what are the activities or projects that are critical for you yourself with your knowledge and skill set to do? Which activities provide profound satisfaction so that make you as an individual satisfied, feel joy, brings peace, however you define your own satisfaction as an individual and a professional. And which activities bring you joy and or are restorative. So things that, in addition to any sort of career satisfaction or happiness, what brings you as the individual on a personal level joy, what restores you or re-energizes you as an individual so that you can bring that into your work and into your home life. We're going to go through a few different sections, and these next two slides are going to include prompts for you to think about. For some of these, you may have immediate answers. For others of these, it may take you a while to sort of think about or journal through, however your brain works best. But they're all designed to be prompts to help you get at least a few answers to what work means for you, what is satisfying, what is work of value, and however you choose to define value, and ultimately how it can help inform your collecting mission. So for reflection, there are the following prompts. What's been on the perpetual to-do list? What work helps you feel fulfilled? What work do you avoid or put off? How is your schedule and routine working for you? Do you have enough time in the day? How does your body feel most days? How does your mental energy feel most days? And how do you feel mentally and emotionally? So you'll notice while some of the prompts ask you about how you're feeling at work and what sort of particular activities help make you feel fulfilled or the opposite, we're also making sure that we're covering prompts that have you check in with how you are doing mentally, emotionally, and physically. Because of course, the space in our mind and how we think of things, how we interpret things, how we experience things, all have an impact on ultimately our health in the various ways our health can manifest. Next step is to assess. So thinking through prompts to help you assess what is happening, what you're currently doing, and helping to inform some future work. Prompts being, what work doesn't need to be done? It's a would be nice. What work can wait until there's better support? What work is crucial for you to do? And look at the time you have available and the work you need to slot in from your to-do list. Does the math make sense? So you'll notice some of the prompts echo our first set of reflections, where it's asking you to think through the things that are essential for you to do, whether whether you have enough time in the day to do them, kind of thing. And now we're getting into that assessment piece of, yes, does the math actually make sense when you compare your to-do list and how long things take compared to how many hours you have in a day? What things from an assessment perspective is absolutely crucial for you to do, because there can be a difference sometimes in when we reflect and how we feel. Things can be critical for us to do versus in reality. So asking you to take a bit more of a critical lens, or as much as possible, an external view of assessment on these particular prompts. And ultimately, when you go through this work, what remains may still be too much for one person. That, in fact, can be incredibly common in the field that we are in. And when that is the case, the operations of the organization and your role need to be radically reconsidered, because as much as we would love to still do more or be as helpful as we can be and serve the organization, there are only so many hours in the day. And the more we are overcommitted, overworked, overwhelmed, and burnt out, that compounds and in the end is disastrous for all of us involved, including the institution. So while it is certainly admirable and there's certainly that culture of perpetual sacrifice present in many nonprofits, including museums and archives, ultimately is not sustainable. And so we need to make sure that if the math is not working out in the number of things we have to do in the day versus the actual number of hours and days that we have, then we need to reconsider what is happening, both on the human level at our individual job, but also broader in the organization. Because chances are, if you are currently tasked with doing way too much for one person, that is likely to be chronic throughout the institution and needs to be addressed. Prune. So doing some pruning of activities, maybe not necessarily a full deaccessioning or degrowth, but really trying to, in a first gentle approach, pruning some things that may not need to be happening, at least on a temporary basis. So prompts being which activities, responsibilities, or tasks are not your job, which activities, responsibilities, or tasks are essential for you to do, which activities, responsibilities, or tasks reasonably fit into a 1 FTE or full-time employment position, and what can be left behind or distributed elsewhere. So taking some of that assessment work that you did and what you've identified through your reflection process, helping to walk you through, of all of those, a second sort of vetting and what can be sort of pruned or rescoped, perhaps paused or scaled down enough where it can help you fit into that, number of hours in the day, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 or what have you. And then, of course, can there be some distribution of things? Ultimately, if we can't stop or pause doing things, are there other things that can be shouldered by multiple people so that it is not such a burden on one person? Rethink. So you've gone through reflection and assessment, pruning some of the things that we can. We also need to be aware of and have opportunity to rethink what it is that we're doing on a daily basis, as well as annually in our jobs. Prompts being rethink everything that doesn't feel good. So while there are things that we do because it's our job, there are probably things in there that do not feel as good, do not make us as career satisfied, or do not bring us joy. And so ultimately, we need to rethink if those are necessary, or at least at the cadence that they are currently. Next, radically reconsider your schedule, routines, commitments, and activities. For many of us, myself included, if I get into a routine, it's easier for my brain just to stick with that routine instead of rethinking, like, do I really need to do that? Or is there perhaps a better and more efficient way to do that? Do I really need to do that as frequently as I'm doing it? And so pausing and considering, like, do you need to have all those various commitments? Are there efficiencies that we can make in terms of what are some of the things that you're doing? Is there a better schedule for you, depending on whether that is like overall project schedule or like daily to weekly schedule? And ultimately, what sort of activities need to be in place, and whereas others can be rethought of, or even if the activity is happening, maybe there's a different or better way we can do it. And then perform major pruning or deaccessioning of people, places, and activities that no longer serve you. So of course, this has a bit of a work and a personal component. You can, of course, deaccession in both sides of your life. But ultimately thinking about, are there things that aren't essential for you, that don't bring you career satisfaction or joy? Do they even really need to be present? And maybe that means that you, don't serve on that voluntary committee, Or maybe that means that of some of these activities, instead, maybe a volunteer can do them on a less frequent basis. So really rethinking some of the stuff that is certainly causing you delays or being blockers to you doing some of the other work that is perhaps more important or more valuable. Protect, thinking about what are your limited resources. And for any human being, there are typically four very important and yet very restricted resources. The first restricted resource is time. We all are allotted the same amount of time, and it doesn't matter what we do with it, it still passes just as quickly. We only have so much energy, so mental, emotional, physical energy. We only have so much throughout the day, let alone throughout the year. Our health, whatever our health is currently, and of course, our health can be impacted for good or for worse, depending on what is happening both in our work and our personal life. And then how many fucks, and apologies for the PG-13 rating of this webinar, but how much care do you have? Like, we can only care about so many things, or we can only give a fuck about so many things, that we ultimately need to be intentional with the areas that we pour our care into. So really having some critical reflection and then protection of areas where you do want to give a fuck, and areas where, like, no, you really don't need to care about this one, at least not as actively anymore. And thinking about that a bit further, because these are limited resources, we need to make sure that there are not people, places, or events that are taking away from or sucking away those types of resources. For example, one of the pop culture terms is energy vampire. So you can have certain friends or family members where when you interact with them, they're an energy vampire and they suck like all of the good energy out of you when you have a social interaction with them. Similar concept. There are people, places, and things, events that we feel like we have to do out of obligation, we should do, which is part obligation, part like shame society, things that, yes, we do really need to do, that we're ultimately responsible for, things that we want to do, all of those flavors, making sure that we're being intentional, that it is, if those things take up resources, are they worth the resources that they cost? We want to make sure we're protecting people, places, and activities that are restorative to you. So while our resources are finite, they can to some extent be replenished. Sometimes they can be replenished through straightforward taking a nap, eating healthy meals, taking a walk outside. Like, there are things that restore you in various mental, physical, and emotional ways. The same can be true depending on your brain and the type of person you are. Sometimes there are people, places, and activities that are specific for you that help to restore you. And so making sure you get those in regularly so that you are replenished in your finite resources to continue on living the kind of life and doing the kind of activities that you want to do. And then protect your ability and capacity to dedicate to people, places, and activities that you give a fuck about, because that's ultimately the point of life, right? Doing the things that mean the most to us, caring for the people who mean the most to us, and showing up in ways that do cost time, energy, and amount of care that we have. So while we want to protect our finite resources, replenish them when possible, both of those go hand in hand to ultimately being able to spend those finite resources on the people, places, and things that we care the most about. And that is true in our workplace as well as true in our personal life. So ultimately, if you remember one thing, I want you to remember this. If you are spending your resources on the people, places, and things that you ultimately don't value, it impacts your ability to engage with the people, places, and things that you do value. So making unintentional decisions or doing things without much intention, draining your resources, will ultimately impact your ability to put resources in the places that really matter to you. And while sometimes that's okay and that's life and that happens, Ultimately, for our sustained happiness and health, we need to make sure that we are being intentional with making sure we have the finite resources that we need to put in and pour into the things that we value most. And fortify. So making sure we've gone through assess, prune, and protect, and protection, especially of finite resources, that's in place. We need to think about engaging in deep rest when our body asks for it. And this is important whether work is extremely crazy and hectic or there's things going on in your personal life. In order to be in a period of sustained working hard or stressful mode, we need to make sure we're matching that with a deep rest mode. I also recommend adopt regular physical and mental health therapies. So whatever it is that works best for your body or your brain, to try and get those in for your for both, whatever activities those look like on a somewhat regular basis. Our bodies and brains work the best when they can anticipate and expect certain therapies or restorative measures at a regular pace. So whatever it is you decide to do, try and do it somewhat regularly. And then acquiring places of joy and peace. So hopefully you already have a couple places that you can think of that bring you joy and or peace. And if not, well, even if you do have a couple, adding a few more is never a bad thing. So finding those so that you have them when you need them, when you need some of that replenishment or you need that peaceful restorative break, that you have those identified. And when we're fortifying stuff, we have to earn and accumulate our resources in order to spend them. So that's part of what the fortifying is about. This can be a slow process, of course, which is why that protection piece is like step number one. Fortifying our resources is also critical, though, and part that second part to how we function. So just again, remembering you can't spend what you don't have. And finally, investing. In our investment, we're investing in resources, we're investing in ourselves, and in that regard, investing in a way where we can show up to our best extent in work, but also in our life in general. And I recommend upgrading your life with better systems, routines, and tools, whatever that looks like for you. If it makes your life like a little bit easier, a little bit more efficient, if it takes away some of the brain drain, by all means, get it in there. Cultivate your expertise in areas where you find satisfaction and that make your job easier. So for us, especially since we're in a field that we typically choose to enter into because we love it, we do have the benefit of that, of having sort of an abundance of different opportunities, whether it's webinars or attending conferences. Maybe it's deep diving into a niche area of research in our particular field. Finding and investing some of your time and energy in those areas can ultimately be both a restorative activity as well as helping to invest in broadening your satisfaction overall, helping to make your job easier, which creates different benefits. So multi-benefit there. Build your career through specific service that is meaningful to you and with organizations that you care about. For most of us, when we're in the field, there's a certain amount of professional service that we do, community service in terms of serving on committees at various different professional organizations or maybe within our institution, all in an effort to give time and energy and skills and expertise to help better something. And while that is an expenditure of those resources, if we're thoughtful about where we place those, that placement of resources can instead be viewed as an investment. Next, grow your network of peers and trusted colleagues beyond your organization. For many of us, it's usually never an instance of where you start your careers, where you are ending your career with no in between. And so having that healthy network is helpful both from a job career perspective, as well as creating a bit of a support network, which can be critical to navigating particularly turbulent times in your organization, is being able to connect with peers and professionals outside of your organization. And find internal and external allies in causes you care about and build on your affinities. And so, as we think of, reflect, identify on things that help to restore us, areas where we want to make sure we're investing, it is very important for us to identify other allies in the cause and ultimately pulling resources together with those allies on causes that you care about. That helps from a efficiency perspective in terms of making sure you're investing resources in areas where they have the best chance to flourish. But it's also great in terms of, again, building that supportive community for yourself, whether that is needing support to stay at your current organization or needing support to help leave your current organization. So, with all of that in mind, thinking through those various thought prompts, doing that assessment, doing some pruning thought prompts, and ultimately thinking of how to take care of your finite resources, fortify, protect, and invest. Those will all help you to identify what is essentially, we're going to call it collecting mission because that's the term we're familiar with, but collecting mission for yourself. So in this particular case, we're focusing on your job, but of course, your collecting mission can really be your life mission and the things that you want to make sure that you focus on and highlight for how you live your life. So putting that all together, I recommend doing a my job is kind of statement. And as you, the things that you have identified for your job and your career, really articulating what are my critical responsibilities in regards to this job? What are the essential activities I perform? And what are the activities that are restorative, bring me joy, and are profoundly satisfying? In this particular case, we're talking about your job. Again, you can extrapolate out and make a life mission if you wish. However, for us, it's really narrowing down what is it that we absolutely have to do? What is it that is an essential activity as we define it and as we perform it? And then what are those activities that, yes, fit the mission of the organization and yes, fit in as part of our job, but have that added benefit of being, yes, it's our job, but it's also providing us joy, it's providing us further career satisfaction, and ultimately being a restorative aid for how we are feeling. And in summary, for your mission, we want it to make sure that it identifies what you value the most. We want to encourage you as you put this together to weigh your decisions, where these investments are going, and other items against your collecting mission, aka your values and your job, to see if it's a fit. So again, we're taking that concept of collecting mission and how we put potential collection acquisitions against it and be like, yes, this fits the mission, or no, we need to pass this. This does not fit. That's what we're asking you to do with this. As a result, we want to periodically reassess your collecting mission and your actual collection, aka your life or your job if you want to keep it specific, and to make sure you're in alignment. And to deaccession, which is to cut out or decide against any activities that don't support your collecting mission. So this is very active in terms of once you establish this mission, going through as you would with a collecting mission and an actual collection, doing periodic updates, making sure that you're weighing any new potential activities or responsibilities against it, and deaccessioning accordingly of those that are no longer in service to your particular job or mission.